If life feels pointless, listen like your future is eavesdropping. Meaning isn't a miracle you receive, it's a muscle you train against resistance, and resistance is the exact boredom, grief, and scrolling that convinces you nothing matters. Camus named this tension the absurd, and still insisted we imagine Sisyphus happy, not because the rock shrank, but because he owned the push. Nietzsche adds that a strong why makes you endure any how, which Viktor Frankl proved in the camps when he turned suffering into service and found that purpose survives where comfort fails. Kierkegaard says despair is the sickness of not willing to be yourself, and Schopenhauer warns that life will wound you anyway, so you may as well pick a wound that buys wisdom. Take this seriously. What's the point? Is a smart question with a lazy habit. Asked forever, it becomes anesthesia. Asked once, it becomes architecture. So build. Pick a burden worthy of love and carry it clean, because meaning is chosen. Like a hill to die on, not discovered like a coupon code. Look at Naruto promising a village. He'll become Hokage when no evidence supports him. Eren in Attack on Titan converting claustrophobia into velocity. Tanjiro in Demon Slayer sanding grief into discipline until every breath becomes a prayer with a blade. Luffy in One Piece turning a ridiculous dream into navigational math. Edward and Alphonse in Full Metal Alchemist paying the bill for shortcuts and learning that equivalent exchange is not just alchemy, it's adulthood. Or Vinland Saga, where Thorfinn graduates from revenge to responsibility and proves that pacifism without strength is posture, and strength without conscience is bankruptcy. Cinema repeats the same thesis in new costumes. The Dark Knight teaches that symbols outlive pain, and that endurance can be ethical. Rocky shows that the bell is not the point. The next step is everything everywhere all at once, argues that in a universe of infinite distractions, tenderness is an act of war. The Lord of the Rings reminds us that carrying a ring you hate is precisely how you protect a world you love. The Last of Us makes it ugly and honest. Love costs civilization and still remains non-negotiable. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are cautionary parables. Competence without character makes you king of ruins, and cleverness without conscience buys you desserts you cannot drink. The Stoics keep their receipts. Marcus Aurelius writes, "The impediment to action advances." Action, meaning the wall is not blocking your path, the wall is your path. Epictetus says freedom begins when you stop auditioning for control over what you never owned, other people's opinions, market weather, childhood luck, and start guarding what you do own. Your choices, your attention, your promises. Simone de Beauvoir reminds you that freedom is not a vibe, but a responsibility to author yourself in a world that would gladly write you for you. Here's the offensive truth you came for. The void is not lying to you, nothing is guaranteed, yet that is not a verdict, it's an invitation, because if there is no preloaded meaning, then you are promoted to builder. So choose a craft and accept its taxes, because every story you admire is expensive. Artists pay with repetition, athletes pay with lactic acid, lovers pay with humility, saints pay with reputation. You want a life that matters. Build rituals that do not care about your mood. 15 pages read daily. 1 honest page written. 1 hour where your phone goes in exile. 10 minutes cold where your body learns it is led, not obeyed. Treat sleep like a moral choice. Make friendship a covenant, not a convenience, and keep your word so ruthlessly that your self-respect starts paying compound interest. When the nihilist voice whistles, "It's all pointless," answer like a blacksmith. Then everything is raw metal. And strike, because blows shape blades, and also the hands that swing them. Design a direction, not a guarantee. Become the kind of person who creates more than he consumes, tells the truth when it is taxed, and leaves places better than he found them. Because identity isn't a mood board, it is logistics repeated until reality submits. When envy arrives dressed as inspiration, convert it into reps. When shame shows up with a slideshow of your failures, harvest the metrics and throw away the theater. When loneliness gnaws, don't anesthetize. Organize. Text 2 people first. Schedule a walk. Host a cheap dinner. Stack chairs afterward. Repeat weekly because meaning is communal before it is cosmic. And yes, the trap is real. If you wait to feel like doing the thing, you train your nervous system to worship weather. If you do the thing while not wanting to, you train it to trust you, which is the only sustainable confidence available to mortals. Don't chase passion. Court craftsmanship. Passion is fireworks. Craftsmanship is a furnace. and a furnace can warm a village. Understand that failure isn't the opposite of meaning, but its tuition. Deku fails spectacularly and keeps moving. Mob Psycho learns that power without kindness is a costume. Shinji in Evangelion proves that avoiding the cockpit hurts more people than facing the nausea. Walter Mitty stops daydreaming and buys a ticket. The pattern is consistent. You cannot think your way out of emptiness. You must behave your way out. Pick one practice for the mind, reading or study, one for the body, strength or endurance, one for service, help that doesn't post well, and one for craft, work that leaves artifacts. Then add the smallest daily unit you cannot break. This is not self-help poetry, it's physics. Momentum is a religion that rewards the faithful and the reluctant alike. Measure yourself not by outcomes but by agreements kept under bad weather, because willpower is unreliable and systems are merciful, and mercy is a better engine than guilt. Interrogate your pleasures. Some feed you, some farm you. Algorithmic. Novelty milks your attention and sells you back a shorter attention span. Trade the empty sugar rush for dense food. Books older than your grandparents. Conversations that outlast battery life. Projects that require a calendar, not a stopwatch. When grief hits, and it will, do not ask it for philosophy, ask it for a task. Plant a tree with a name. Write the eulogy before you forget the laugh. Cook the dish they loved, badly at first, beautifully by year 3. Transform absence into assignment. Because love that learns to labor doesn't vanish. It changes verbs. If your past is loud, make commitments louder. No more negotiating with habits you pretend you deserve when tired. Tired is the exam, not the excuse. If your future feels blank, that's not emptiness, that's primed canvas. Start ugly, start small, start now. And when the question returns at midnight, what's the point? Answer without poetry. The point is to take responsibility for a corner of the world, to build competence until it can't be ignored, to keep one promise so long it becomes a landmark, to make your name mean the person who shows up, and to hand off a life that would embarrass your former self with its steadiness. Do this long enough and Pointless becomes a souvenir from a country you no longer live in, proof that you once mistook silence for meaninglessness, and learn it the hard way, and the only way, that silence is not emptiness. It is the room where you finally begin. If life still feels like a grey hallway with no doors, treat this as the moment you start carving a handle. The second you decide to act on a value instead of a feeling, the hallway becomes architecture. Kierkegaard called despair the sickness unto death, but he also said the cure is to choose. Choose yourself in truth, and that means building a self that behaves its way into meaning, one reliable promise at a time. Simone Weil noted that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. So aim your attention like a lighthouse. 15 minutes on a page that outlives your mood. One conversation where you actually listen until the other person finishes the last sentence. One repetition after your muscles ask you to stop. And you convert minutes into meaning because attention is how love learns to work. Epictetus would remind you that the door to freedom opens inward. Control your judgments, your aims, your actions, and suddenly the world stops feeling like a verdict and starts feeling like a workshop. Hannah Arendt warned about the banality of evil, which here becomes the banality of drift. Nothing monstrous, just 1,000 small abdications that flatten you into background noise. Resist drift with design, schedule your courage, ritualize your beginnings, and you'll discover that confidence is not a feeling, but the memory of promises kept. Watch The Martian and steal Mark Watney's line. You solve one problem, then the next. Because that's not a movie trick, it's an ethics of survival. Shawshank Redemption seals the contract. Get busy living or get busy dying is not a slogan. It's a fork in the road you face in every tiny choice to pick craft over comfort. In anime, Yuji Itadori in Jujutsu Kaisen chooses to save people now, not later, proving meaning is urgent, not theoretical. In Haikyuu, Hinata turns short stature into strategy by outworking physics, which teaches you to translate limits into focus. In One Punch Man, Saitama's boredom is a parable. Remove difficulty, and you remove meaning, so stop praying for easier wins and build better sales. Thorfinn in Vinland Saga graduates from revenge to responsibility, which is exactly the journey from drama to depth. When you trade image for impact, your life stops auditioning and starts performing. Miyamoto Musashi said, "You can only fight the way you practice." So practice like your ordinary days are the mold that casts your extraordinary ones, because they are. In The Queen's Gambit, Beth's brilliance only becomes destiny when she sobers her chaos and chooses a team, showing that genius without guardrails becomes a cliff. Goodwill Hunting drives the same spike. Talent stalls until honesty shows up. It's not your fault. Unlocks the room, but Will still has to walk out, and walking out is the work. Take Frankel seriously when he insists that meaning is found in creating, loving, and suffering bravely. So create something traceable, a line of code that ships, a riff recorded, a garden that survives July. Love someone measurably. Call your mother, tutor a kid, be the friend who arrives with dinner, not advice, and suffer usefully. Turn setbacks into protocols you can teach. When the void whispers, nothing matters, answer with engineering. Define your identity as a present tense verb. I build, I learn, I serve, I tell the truth when it costs me. Because nouns get dusty, but verbs move. If you fear starting because you might fail, remember Rocky. He wins in round 1 of his E. So the moment he refuses to stay down. So your job is not to guarantee victory, it's to guarantee attendance. Deku in My Hero Academia earns power after he commits to responsibility, proving that gifts become purpose only when you mortgage them to duty. In Evangelion, Shinji shows what avoidance buys: more pain for everyone. So step into the cockpit of your life even when your hands shake, because trembling hands still hold levers. Dante climbed out of hell by walking, not by wishing, and Marcus Aurelius would nod. What stands in the way becomes the way is not motivational wallpaper, it's a map. Use grief to deepen compassion. Use envy to reverse engineer skill. Use fear to identify the next honest rep. Make your environment a co-author. Put the phone in a different room. Lay out the shoes before you sleep. Keep books in the path of your eyes. Stack tiny wins like bricks until a wall appears between you and the person you refuse to be. Dostoevsky wrote that, "Man is a mystery. Solve it." If you spend your entire life solving it, don't say you wasted your time, which means inquiry itself is a life worth living. Journal until patterns confess. Learn until ignorance turns into curiosity. Build until your hands remember what your mind forgets. Interstellar declares that love is a data point strong enough to cross dimensions, but the film still lands its ship with math, not vibes, and that marriage of heart and habit is your model. Aim with love, hit with process. When loneliness prowls, copy The Fellowship of the Ring and form a fellowship of your own. 3 people, cheap food, weekly rhythm, because hope scales with company and silence becomes music when others share it. And if you still crave a final reason, take Nietzsche's wager. Live so that you could endorse your days on repeat. Eternal recurrence not as metaphysics but as audit, asking, would I relive this Tuesday as designed? And if the answer is no, re-architect the next Tuesday tonight with 2 changes you will keep. Do this and you'll notice the hallway brighten. Not because someone flipped a cosmic switch, but because you installed lights, and installation, not inspiration, is how meaning stops being a rumor and becomes the room you inhabit. Here is the end game, the part where we stop auditioning for a meaningful life and sign the contract in ink. You do not need a cosmic telegram to proceed. You need a vow, testable by Tuesday, because as Nietzsche warned, become who you are is not a compliment. It's a sentence with hard labor, and as Frankel proved, the judge is your conscience at night. So close the trilogy like this. Name the hill you will die on, reduce it to daily choreography, and build a circle that makes betrayal of that. Choreography embarrassing. This is not pep talk, it's architecture. One craft you'll refine even when it pays nothing. One body you'll steward even when no mirror claps. One relationship you'll protect with unsexy maintenance. And one truth you'll refuse to sell even when silence would be cheaper. Camus's Sisyphus is still pushing his rock, but by now you should see the secret. The push carves a path for those behind you, and the sweat becomes grammar. Others learn to speak. Anime keeps showing the blueprint because animation can't fake discipline. Tanjiro's breathwork, Hinata's footwork, Luffy's laughable dream, each turns ridicule into root. Cinema echoes the same refrain in different costumes. In The Dark Knight, why do we fall? So we learn to pick a city up. In Interstellar, love aims the ship, but math lands it. In A Silent Voice, redemption isn't a speech, it's 1,000 micro-apologies performed as presence. In The Bear, competence is grief metabolized into mise en place. And in And/or rebellion is rebranded logistics, small honest acts repeated until the dam breaks. Stoicism removes your last excuse. Marcus Aurelius. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining, not because pain is romantic, but because complaint is a tax on power. Kierkegaard says leap, but he never promised you wings mid-air, only that dread is the fee for existing authentically. Even the cautionary tales are compassionate. Breaking Bad shows talent starved of virtue turns to ash. Evangelion insists avoidance multiplies pain. Joker warns that isolation plus humiliation breeds monsters, so if you want a saner world, schedule decency. Don't outsource it to mood. Here is the ceremony. Write a brief rule of life you can say in a breath. I build, I learn, I tell the truth when it costs, I leave places better. Tie it to anchors. Same hour, same spot, same tools, because identity loves repetition more than inspiration. Turn envy into curriculum. Study what you envy, line by line. Turn fear into compass. Go where avoidance spikes. Turn shame into instruction. Extract the lesson, delete the theater. And when grief returns, give it a chair and a task. Plant the tree, cook the recipe, finish the letter, because love that labors refuses extinction. Make friendship a workshop. Eat cheap together weekly. Share drafts. Trade honest feedback with kindness. Celebrate kept promises louder than outcomes. Measure your life not by virality, but by stewardship. Did you guard your attention? Did you protect the vulnerable version of you that wanted to quit? Did you add one brick to the cathedral you might never see finished? And when the temptation to vanish whispers, "What's the point?" Answer with work. Like Rocky standing up again, like Frodo moving one more step, like Mob choosing kindness over spectacle, like Beth Harmon choosing team over chaos, like Shinji stepping into the cockpit before he feels ready. Seneca reminds you that life is long if you know how to use it, so use it. Set the next visible task. Do it with clean hands, then the next. And if you still crave a final verdict, take Nietzsche's audit of eternal recurrence tonight. Would you relive this day? And if the answer is no, change 2 things before bed and defend them for a month. This is how Pointless loses its accent, not with fireworks but with a furnace. Rituals that outlast weather, promises that survive silence, courage domesticated into habit. There won't be a curtain call, just a quiet morning where you realize you became the kind of person whose life explains itself. No manifesto, no plea, only the proof of a long obedience that turned a small, stubborn vow into a story someone else can stand on when the hallway goes gray again. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing and check out the videos on the screen. And never forget, live your life to the fullest.